Ethan Yan's office, perched high in the city's financial tower, was the epitome of corporate power. Sunlight streamed through the panoramic windows, reflecting off the polished mahogany desk as he reviewed the day's schedule. "Mr. Yin," his assistant announced, stepping into the spacious room with an air of practiced efficiency, "the representative from We Corporation has arrived. Here are her credentials." "Thank you, Lisa," Ethan replied, accepting the folder. "Please, show her in." He casually flipped open the file as Lisa withdrew, his mind already drifting to the upcoming meeting. But the moment his eyes landed on the photograph, stapled to the information sheet, he froze. The blood seemed to drain from his face. Staring back at him, with an unnerving familiarity, was a face he thought he'd buried in the deepest recesses of his memory. Xia Qingning. Lily. Just then, the distinct click of heels against the marble floor echoed from the hallway, growing louder with each step. Ethan slowly raised his gaze, his heart pounding a disorienting rhythm against his ribs. The woman in the photograph, a ghost from his past, was now vibrantly, undeniably real, standing before him. A lump formed in his throat, words catching before they could escape. "Lily," he managed, his voice a hoarse whisper. Meeting his stunned expression, Lily offered a cool, composed smile, a stark contrast to the girl he remembered. "Mr. Yin," she greeted, her voice smooth and professional. "It's been a long time." They were siblings in name only, their connection forged by Ethan's financial support of Lily's education. His sole condition, unspoken, but understood, was that she would look after his dearest friend, Sophia Song. Sophia, the woman who held the key to his heart. 3 years ago, Ethan had meticulously planned a grand confession of his love for Sophia. Instead, he had lost not only the woman he adored, but also, perhaps, the woman who secretly adored him. He remembered a younger, more naive Lily, her voice soft with inquiry. "Ethan, you really like Sophia, don't you?" A fond smile had touched his lips then, his gaze unwavering. "Like isn't a strong enough word, Lily. I intend to marry her." Lily had always been aware of Ethan's deep affection for Sophia, but the explicit declaration of marriage, that was a different weight altogether. She would never forget the day she first stepped into the Yin family mansion. Ethan, with his characteristic gentle authority, had laid out the terms of his generosity. "I will sponsor your education until you graduate university, Lily. In return, I ask you to take care of Sophia. She's the most important person in my life." That day, the unspoken truth had crystallized. Every kindness, every gesture of support from Ethan was ultimately for Sophia. Lily was simply a conduit, a bridge to the woman he truly desired. Snapping back to the present, Lily took a controlled breath, her professional facade unwavering. "Ethan," she began, using his given name for the first time since their awkward reunion, "what if Sophia has fallen for someone else? Someone who isn't you?" Ethan blinked, momentarily taken aback by the unexpected question. Then, a dismissive shrug touched his shoulders. "Then it would mean she's finally learning to open up, to connect with others. That would be a good thing." He truly believed it, blinded by his idealized image of Sophia and his unwavering faith in their destined connection. In class that afternoon, Lily found her focus fractured, Ethan's words echoing in her mind. Just as her thoughts began to spiral, her phone vibrated in her pocket. A message from Sophia. "Lily, let's meet for dinner at Moonrise Pavilion. Ethan will be there too." Moonrise Pavilion was their usual haunt, a comfortable space for their infrequent gatherings. When Lily arrived, Sophia and Ethan were already seated across from each other, the table laden with a tempting array of dishes. Sophia, her gaze lowered as she nervously fiddled with her silverware, broke the news. "Lily," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "I'm planning to go abroad in 2 days. I might not be back for a long time." A flicker of surprise, tinged with a strange sense of foreboding, crossed Lily's face. Sophia was leaving, and soon. What about Ethan's grand plans? When would he confess his feelings? "Sophia," Lily asked gently, concern lacing her voice, "are you sure you'll be all right, all alone overseas?" Before Sophia could formulate a reply, Ethan interjected, his voice decisive. No need to worry, Lily. I've decided to go with Sophia. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the window panes. Though it was still weeks away from autumn's full embrace, a chilling coldness seeped into Lily's bones, originating somewhere deep within her chest. Sleepless hours bled into a gray dawn. Lily arrived at school earlier than usual, seeking solace in the routine of academia. She imagined Sophia and Ethan's flight already soaring through the sky, carrying them further away from her reach. But as she stepped into the classroom, her breath hitched in her throat. Ethan was there, leaning against the doorway, his expression unreadable. Ethan? Lily stammered, her carefully constructed composure crumbling. Shouldn't you be with Sophia? Leaving the country? Ethan's gaze settled on her, a flicker of something unidentifiable in his eyes. Sophia, he said, his voice flat, decided she wants to experience life on her own for a while. Sophia had left. Her return date, uncertain. A chilling realization dawned on Lily, constricting her chest, stealing her breath. And then, Ethan's voice, cold and devoid of its usual warmth, cut through the silence. Now that Sophia's gone, there's no reason for you to stay either, Lily. South Central University, Lee City. Lily watched Ethan Yin standing beside his sleek sedan at the campus gates, her breath still ragged from her hurried dash from class. Ethan Yin, the CEO of the prestigious Chinua Corporation and her benefactor since high school. She composed herself, slowing her pace as she approached. Ethan, she greeted, using his familiar nickname. What brings you here? Is everything all right? It had been nearly 2 weeks since their last, strained encounter. She'd half convinced herself that Ethan would simply fade from her life. His purpose, her caretaking of Sophia, seemingly dissolved. She certainly hadn't expected him to reach out, especially not today, Mid-Autumn Festival, a day for family reunions. But the next words that left his lips were like a bucket of icy water, shattering her fragile hope. Sophia's back. I'm here to take you home to see her. Lily's smile froze on her face, the warmth draining away. She stared at the undisguised joy radiating from his eyes, her fingers clenching into fists, nails digging crescents into her palms. She should have known. From the moment she had been welcomed into the Yin household, she had been acutely aware of Sophia's paramount importance in Ethan's world. They were childhood sweethearts, their bond woven through years of shared history. And she, Lily, Sophia's trusted friend, was merely a tool, a convenient bridge for Ethan to reach his true object of affection. Desperate to mask the sharp pang of disappointment, Lily attempted a polite refusal. Actually, Ethan, I have class tomorrow morning. Ethan cut her off smoothly, his tone brooking no argument. I know your schedule, Lily. There's plenty of time. Her flimsy excuse exposed, Lily's breath hitched. She avoided his gaze, suddenly unable to meet his eyes. A brief, charged silence hung between them before Ethan turned away, his gaze fixed on some distant point. Come on, he urged, his voice losing its warmth. Let's not keep Sophia waiting. He turned and walked towards the car, the unspoken command hanging in the air. Lily's eyelashes fluttered, a storm of emotions swirling within her. With a sigh that held a universe of suppressed longing, she followed, making her way to the passenger side door. As she opened it, a burst of crimson and cream assaulted her senses. The seat was overflowing with vibrant red roses and elegantly wrapped gift boxes. A Valentine's Day explosion in October. This lavish display of affection was undeniably, unequivocally for Sophia. Lily's reaction was delayed, a strange mix of envy and something akin to resignation washing over her. Wordlessly, she closed the passenger door and slipped into the back seat, the opulent bouquet a fragrant, painful reminder of her own invisibility. The drive to the Yin family villa passed in strained silence. As Lily followed Ethan through the grand entrance, she found Sophia curled up on the plush sofa, her head bent over her phone, lost in her digital world. Sophia, who always seemed to exist on the periphery of social interactions, her comfort zone a world of solitude. Lily was one of the few people Sophia genuinely seemed to connect with. Seeing them enter, Sophia looked up, a shy smile gracing her lips. She reached out and gently pulled Lily down beside her on the sofa. "Lily, Ethan told me you got into South Central University. That's amazing." "Thank you," Lily murmured, forcing a smile that felt brittle and false. For years ago, she had been a girl from a remote mountain village, her future uncertain, her prospects dim. Without Ethan's unexpected generosity, she would likely have been forced to abandon her dreams of higher education, her life taking a vastly different path. "Lily was saying she wanted to celebrate with you when your results came out," Ethan said, settling onto the sofa beside Sophia, his voice softening with a tenderness he rarely showed to Lily. "But you decided to stay away for a whole year before finally coming home." Sophia unconsciously recoiled slightly as Ethan drew closer, shifting further into her corner of the sofa. "I'm sorry," she mumbled, her gaze fixed on her lap. "Something came up. I had to stay longer than expected." Listening to Sophia's hesitant explanation, a bitter ache settled in Lily's chest. She knew, with a certainty that bordered on pain, that Ethan had spent countless days and sleepless nights yearning for Sophia's return. Lost in her thoughts, Lily watched as Ethan retrieved the lavish gifts from the car, presenting them to Sophia with a hopeful smile. "Welcome home presents," he announced. Then, sensing Sophia's potential reluctance, he quickly added, "They're from both Lily and me." A sharp sting pierced Lily's heart, but under Ethan's expectant gaze, she could only offer Sophia a weak, encouraging smile and a nod of agreement. Sophia, after a moment of hesitation, accepted the gifts, her voice barely audible. "Thank you, Lily. And thank you, Ethan." Their quiet reunion was soon interrupted by the arrival of Ethan's parents, bustling in after a long day at work. The Yin and Song families were intertwined by decades of friendship, and Mr. and Mrs. Yin had always treated Sophia as their own daughter. Dinner was promptly served, the family gathering around the large dining table. Lily found herself seated on the periphery, an outsider looking in on this warm, familial scene. Mrs. Yin, ever the doting mother, piled food onto Sophia's plate, her tone warm and inquisitive. "Sophia, you must be, what, 23 now? Have you met any nice young men overseas? Any boyfriends?" A sudden hush fell over the table. All conversation ceased. Forks paused mid-air. Mrs. Yin, oblivious to the sudden tension, continued, undeterred by Sophia's silence. "Your cousin, Aaron, is about your age, isn't he? And you two have known each other since you were little. Maybe you should think about giving dating a try." The atmosphere around the dining table shifted, becoming palpably awkward. Lily's throat tightened, her gaze involuntarily drawn to Ethan across the table. He glanced at Sophia, who was visibly shrinking in her seat, her discomfort radiating outwards. Ethan quickly intervened, smoothly cutting off his mother's matchmaking attempts. "Mom," he said, his voice calm but firm, "let's not rush things. It's something that should happen naturally, if it's meant to be." Lily understood perfectly. He was terrified of making Sophia uncomfortable, of pushing her away. His every action, every word, was carefully calibrated to cater to Sophia's sensitivities. All his tenderness, all his consideration, was exclusively reserved for her. The delicious food in front of Lily suddenly lost all its appeal. She couldn't bring herself to swallow a single bite. Mrs. Yin, sensing the shift in mood, was about to press further when Sophia abruptly put down her chopsticks, pushing her plate away. I'm finished," she mumbled, rising from her chair. Her eyes, wide and slightly panicked, sought out Lily's across the table, a silent plea for rescue. "Lily," Sophia asked, her voice barely a whisper, Could you come back to my room with me?" Sophia had always been overwhelmed by social gatherings, her anxieties exacerbated by the unfamiliarity of being back in Lee City. In this moment, Lily was her only anchor, her safe haven. Bound by years of friendship and acutely aware of Ethan's silent expectation, Lily could not refuse. "Of course," she said softly, pushing back her own chair. She lowered her gaze and followed Sophia as she retreated from the dining room. As Lily reached the bottom of the staircase, she couldn't resist a quick glance back. Across the room, Ethan's gaze was fixed on Sophia's retreating figure, his expression a complex tapestry of longing and concern. A wave of bitterness washed over Lily. She knew, with a certainty that was both agonizing and familiar, that devoted, yearning look was meant solely for Sophia and could never be directed at her. Back in Sophia's room, the hushed murmur of polite dinner conversation faded behind the closed door. Sophia exhaled deeply, the tension visibly draining from her shoulders. Finally free from the scrutiny of others, she began to talk, her words tumbling out in a rush as she recounted her experiences abroad, the sights, the sounds, the strange new customs. Lily listened, her responses automatic, her mind still replaying the awkward dinner conversation, Mrs. Yan's well-meaning but intrusive questions, Ethan's carefully worded deflection. "Lily?" Sophia's voice broke through her reverie. "Are you all right? You seem miles away today." Lily blinked, refocusing on Sophia's gentle, concerned gaze. An impulsive, reckless question escaped her lips before she could fully consider the consequences. "Sophia," she asked, her voice barely audible, have you ever thought about being with Ethan? In a romantic way?" Sophia blinked, her expression a mixture of confusion and surprise. "What? Where did that come from?" Lily's gaze flickered away, suddenly feeling foolish and exposed. "Just curious," she mumbled, offering a weak, unconvincing smile. "Just wondering." She longed to hear Sophia vehemently deny any romantic feelings for Ethan, yet a strange, perverse part of her also dreaded that denial. Caught in this internal conflict, she heard Sophia's soft reply. "Ethan is wonderful. He's been so kind to me, always. But no, Lily, I don't love him like that." A sudden stillness settled over Lily, a strange calm in the midst of her turbulent emotions. She looked into Sophia's gentle, honest eyes, the words she had been struggling to articulate suddenly caught in her throat. This was the answer she had craved, the confirmation she had unconsciously sought. Yet, a strange, hollow ache remained in her heart, a sense of emptiness she couldn't quite decipher. Sophia, still battling jet lag, was soon overcome by drowsiness. After a brief, whispered goodnight, Lily slipped out of the room, leaving Sophia to her much-needed rest. As she gently closed the door behind her, she saw Ethan leaning against the wall across the hallway, his figure cast in shadow. Their eyes met, and he slowly straightened, his posture shifting from relaxed to tense. "She's asleep?" he asked, his voice low. Lily nodded, releasing the doorknob. "Yes." Ethan hesitated for a moment, then his voice took on a tentative, almost hesitant tone. Did she say anything about tonight? About what my mother said?" Lily met his anxious gaze, answering truthfully. "No, Ethan. She didn't mention it." A visible wave of relief washed over Ethan's face, his shoulders relaxing slightly. "Good," he murmured, more to himself than to Lily. "Listen, I'm going to stay home tomorrow and spend the day with Sophia. I probably won't be able to drive you to school." Lily swallowed the rising lump in her throat, managing a small, strained smile. "It's all right, Ethan. Really, I understand." She was used to it, after all. Sophia, always and forever, held the top priority in Ethan's world. Reassured by her placid acceptance, Ethan's features softened, a hint of his usual gentle warmth returning. "Get some rest, Lily. Good night." His tone was kind, almost brotherly, yet laced with a subtle distance, a formality that was worlds away from the unguarded tenderness he reserved for Sophia. Lily watched him turn and walk away, his retreating figure disappearing around the corner of the hallway. The emotions she had been suppressing all evening, a volatile mix of longing, resentment, and a quiet, persistent sadness, threatened to erupt. Clenching her fists, knuckles white, she couldn't stop herself from calling out, the question tumbling from her lips, raw and vulnerable. "Ethan," she asked, her voice trembling slightly, do you "Do you really love Sophia?" Ethan stopped in his tracks, turning back to face her, his expression unreadable in the dim hallway light. A soft smile touched his lips, a smile that held unwavering conviction. "Love isn't strong enough word, Lily," he stated, his voice firm and resolute. "I'm going to marry her." The moonlight retreated behind a bank of clouds, plunging the room into near darkness. Lily curled into herself on the edge of her bed, Ethan's words echoing relentlessly in her mind. "I'm going to marry her." She had always known, deep down, that Ethan loved Sophia, but to hear him articulate his intention to marry her, it was a different kind of pain, a confirmation of a future she could never be a part of. The night wind, whispering through the partially open window, brushed against her face, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and the distant hum of the city. Lily swallowed the bitter lump in her throat, burying her face in her pillow, forcing herself to seek oblivion in sleep. But even in her dreams, she was haunted by the memory of Ethan picking her up from school earlier that day. She was transported back to her first day in the Yin mansion, the day her life had irrevocably changed, the day she had first known a life free from want and worry. A teenage girl, blossoming into womanhood, encountering a man who held the power to shape her future. How could she not have been drawn to him, her young heart vulnerable to his kindness, his quiet strength? Then, the day Ethan had revealed the true nature of their arrangement. "Lily," he had said, his voice gentle but firm, "I will sponsor your education until you graduate university. In return, I ask you to take good care of Sophia, because she is the most important person in my life." And in that moment, the truth had become searingly clear. Every act of kindness, every gesture of generosity had been filtered through the lens of Sophia. Lily was merely an instrument, a means to an end, in Ethan's unwavering pursuit of the woman he truly loved. Lily awoke with a start, her heart pounding, the remnants of the dream clinging to her like a shroud. A profound sense of desolation settled over her. Sleep was no longer an option. She rose, her movements mechanical, and began to pack her bag, preparing to return to the familiar, if less comfortable, sanctuary of her university dorm. As she descended the stairs, she collided with Sophia and Ethan in the hallway, their figures bathed in the soft morning light filtering through the windows. Seeing Lily, Sophia's face lit up, her usual reserve melting away. "Lily, good morning. We were just about to head out to the temple to pray for blessings. Would you like to join us?" Lily glanced at Ethan, then back at Sophia, her voice soft but firm. "No, thank you, Sophia. I need to get back to school." "Oh, all right," Sophia said, a flicker of disappointment in her eyes. Ethan checked his watch, then stepped forward, his voice brooking no argument. "It's still early, Lily. Come with us. We have plenty of time." Before she could formulate a polite refusal, Ethan had already turned and walked towards the front door, leaving no room for dissent. Lily's grip on her backpack straps tightened. With a sigh of resignation, she followed, her footsteps echoing softly on the polished floor. A light rain had fallen earlier that morning, leaving the air crisp and clean. The temple grounds were relatively quiet, only a handful of early morning worshippers scattered amongst the ancient trees. Inside the serene temple, Lily knelt before the imposing Buddha statue, the rhythmic chanting of the Heart Sutra washing over her. Her gaze drifted to Ethan, who stood patiently beside Sophia, guiding her through the rituals of prayer. Slowly, she closed her eyes, her heart aching with a bittersweet mix of love and resignation. Despite her usual skepticism towards organized religion, she offered a silent, heartfelt prayer, wishing for Ethan's health, happiness, and well-being, even if that happiness lay beyond her reach. After their prayers, Lily quietly approached a monk and obtained a small amulet, a symbol of protection and good fortune. She watched as Ethan and Sophia walked ahead, their figures disappearing into the dappled sunlight filtering through the temple garden. Reaching into her backpack, she retrieved a small, worn pouch. Inside, nestled amongst a few dried flower petals, was a faded photograph, a snapshot of Ethan from his university days, a picture she had discovered while cleaning his study months ago. With trembling fingers, Lily slipped the photograph into the amulet, securing it within the protective pouch. She fastened the delicate cord around her wrist, a silent, secret promise she made to herself, a tangible symbol of her unspoken devotion. On the drive back to the inn villa, Ethan was behind the wheel, his attention focused on the road ahead. Sophia, her usual shyness forgotten, pulled Lily into a hushed conversation in the back seat. As they chatted about their temple visit, Sophia turned to Lily, her voice conspiratorial. "Lily, what did you pray for?" Lily's eyelashes fluttered, a faint blush rising to her cheeks. "Just for a good luck charm," she mumbled, avoiding Sophia's direct gaze. Sophia nodded thoughtfully, then leaned closer, lowering her voice to a near whisper. "Actually," she confided, a hint of girlish excitement in her tone, "I prayed for an yin fu marriage/love charm." "You know," Sophia continued, a shy smile gracing her lips, "there's someone special in my life, someone I met overseas." It was the first time Lily had ever seen Sophia display such open, unguarded emotion, a glimpse of a youthful vulnerability hidden beneath her reserved exterior. Lily's mind went blank, her thoughts scattering like startled birds. As Sophia's words registered, her gaze instinctively shifted to Ethan in the driver's seat. He remained oblivious, his eyes fixed on the road, seemingly unaware of their hushed conversation in the back. Sophia has someone else? The realization hit Lily with the force of a physical blow. What does this mean for Ethan? Did he know? Should she tell him? The questions swirled in her mind, unresolved, unanswered. The car pulled up to the Yin family villa, the familiar gates closing behind them. Ethan switched off the ignition, reaching for his seatbelt release. "Ethan," Sophia said suddenly, her voice clear and decisive, "why don't you drive Lily back to school? I'm sure she's running late for class." Before Ethan could respond, Sophia had already opened her door and stepped out of the car, leaving Lily momentarily stunned. By the time Lily had gathered her wits, Ethan had already restarted the engine, the car purring back to life. An oppressive silence descended in the car, thick and heavy with unspoken emotions. The silence stretched, unbroken, until they reached the university gates. As the car slowed to a stop, Lily reached for her seatbelt, preparing to escape the suffocating tension of the enclosed space. But before she could unbuckle, Ethan's voice, soft and measured, broke the silence. "What were you two talking about back there?" Lily hesitated, biting her lip. Just about our prayers at the temple," she replied, carefully omitting the crucial detail of Sophia's confession. Ethan didn't press further, seemingly satisfied with her vague answer. He simply offered a perfunctory reminder. "Remember to come back tonight. Sophia will want to see you." His tone, as always, was polite, almost gentle, but it did nothing to soothe the turmoil raging within Lily. Sophia's revelation, Ethan's obliviousness, the unspoken truth that hung heavy between them. It all coalesced into a suffocating wave of despair. Hesitantly, Lily began to speak, the question she had been wrestling with all morning finally forcing its way out. "Ethan," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "about tomorrow." But Ethan, lost in his own world of hopeful anticipation, cut her off mid-sentence. "Lily," he announced, his voice filled with a quiet excitement, "tomorrow, I'm going to ask Sophia to marry me." The air in the car seemed to solidify, the silence becoming absolute, deafening. Lily stared at him, momentarily stunned, her breath catching in her throat. You're sure about this?" she stammered, the words barely audible. Ethan nodded, a small, determined smile playing on his lips. "Yes, Lily, I am. It's time. I want to settle down, to take care of her, properly." His casual, understated words struck Lily like a physical blow, a sharp, agonizing pain that resonated deep within her chest. For a moment, she couldn't distinguish between the raw ache of heartbreak and a strange, unsettling sense of dread. Slowly, deliberately, she tightened her grip on the seatbelt, taking a deep, shuddering breath. "Ethan," she asked, her voice barely a whisper, what if Sophia loves someone else? Someone who isn't you?" Ethan paused, a flicker of confusion crossing his features. Then, a dismissive shrug touched his shoulders, his certainty unwavering. Then, he said, his voice calm and matter-of-fact, it would mean she's finally learning to connect with others, to open herself up to the world. And that, Lily, would be a good thing. Lily stared at him, speechless. Ethan's unwavering optimism, his blind faith in his destined love for Sophia, was both admirable and utterly heartbreaking. He was so completely, devastatingly wrong. A heavy silence descended once more. Lily, numb and disoriented, didn't register how she exited the car, how she made her way back to her dorm room. The world around her seemed muted, distant, unreal. Even in class, her mind remained adrift, Ethan's words echoing in her thoughts. A relentless, painful loop. Lost in her reverie, she barely registered the sound of the dismissal bell. As she rose to leave, her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from Sophia, "Lily, let's meet for lunch at Moonrise Pavilion. Ethan will be there too." Lily hesitated, a knot of unease tightening in her stomach. But then, another message arrived, this time from Ethan, a simple, insistent command, "Be there." With a sigh of resignation, she typed a single word in reply, "Okay." Moonrise Pavilion, their familiar haunt. When Lily arrived, Sophia and Ethan were already seated, the table groaning under the weight of numerous dishes. Ethan's gaze immediately found hers across the room, his eyes locking with hers for a brief, charged moment. A strange, unsettling sensation, like a sudden sting, pierced through Lily's heart. She lowered her gaze, forcing a semblance of composure as she took the empty seat beside Sophia. "What's the occasion?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Why Moonrise Pavilion, so suddenly?" Sophia poured her a cup of tea, offering a small, melancholic smile. "Because," she said softly, her gaze lowered, "it's probably the last time we'll be able to come here together." "Lily," Sophia continued, her voice barely above a whisper, "I'm leaving the country again. In 2 days. I don't think I'll be back for a long time." A sharp intake of breath escaped Lily's lips. Surprise, tinged with a strange sense of inevitability, washed over her. Sophia's family had relocated overseas years ago, which was why Sophia's visits home were so infrequent. But this felt different, more permanent. Sophia was leaving again, and so soon. And what about Ethan? His carefully laid plans, his grand proposal? When would he find the time to confess his feelings, to declare his love, before Sophia vanished from his life once more? Her gaze shifted instinctively to Ethan, seated across the table. She saw his hand, reaching for his water glass, falter for a fraction of a second, a barely perceptible tremor. Then, his voice, calm and controlled, cut through the sudden, heavy silence. "When are you leaving?" he asked, his eyes fixed on Sophia, his expression unreadable. "The day after tomorrow," Sophia replied quietly, her gaze lowered to her teacup. 2 p.m. flight. A heavy, unspoken tension settled over the table, silencing them all. The lunch at Moonrise Pavilion ended abruptly, the delicious food untouched, the atmosphere strained and unnatural. Lily bid a hasty farewell to Ethan and Sophia, escaping back to the relative sanctuary of her university campus. Due to a full schedule of classes, she knew she wouldn't be able to see Sophia off at the airport the day after tomorrow. So she decided to return to the Yin Villa a day early, wanting to spend at least a few more hours with her friend before her departure. The following afternoon, Lily gently knocked on Sophia's bedroom door at the villa. After a moment, Sophia's familiar voice called out softly from within. "Come in, Lily." Lily pushed the door open, finding Sophia surrounded by half-packed suitcases, the room in a state of gentle chaos. She stepped inside, immediately offering to help. "Let me help you with that," she said, picking up a neatly folded pile of clothes and starting to place them in a suitcase. "Why are you leaving so suddenly this time, Sophia?" Sophia's face brightened, her usual quiet demeanor replaced by a soft, almost radiant joy. "Because," she said, her voice filled with a barely suppressed excitement, I want to go back and see him as soon as possible. A sharp pang resonated in Lily's chest, a familiar ache of unrequited longing. Suddenly, a deeper, more resonant male voice echoed from the doorway. All packed and ready to go? Lily's head snapped up, her gaze colliding with Ethan's. He stood framed in the doorway, his expression unreadable, his presence suddenly filling the room. Sophia's response was immediate, her voice eager. Almost. But the overflowing suitcase, crammed with clothes and belongings, stubbornly refused to close, the zipper straining under the pressure. Lily instinctively knelt down, adding her strength to Sophia's, attempting to wrestle the unruly suitcase shut. As she struggled with the zipper, her gaze fell upon a framed photograph placed carefully on top of the overflowing suitcase. It was a picture of the three of them, their first ever photograph together, taken years ago, a faded snapshot of a shared past. Even in that long-ago image, Lily noticed with a pang of sadness, Ethan's gaze was already fixed on Sophia, his attention solely, irrevocably hers. Lily quietly averted her eyes, suppressing the familiar surge of emotion. She forced herself to focus on the task at hand, her voice carefully neutral. As she spoke to Sophia, "Sophia," she asked, her voice barely audible above the rustle of fabric and the strain of the zipper, "Are you sure? Are you sure you'll be all right, all alone overseas?" Before Sophia could respond, Ethan's voice cut through the air, his words definitive, final. "Don't worry, Lily," he said, his gaze fixed on Sophia, his tone leaving no room for argument. "I've decided to go with Sophia. I'll be going with her." Silence descended upon the room, broken only by the mournful howl of the wind rattling the window panes outside. Though autumn was still weeks away from its full, fiery display, a chilling coldness spread through Lily, originating deep within her chest, a physical manifestation of the emotional desolation engulfing her. She opened her mouth, a silent plea for explanation forming on her lips, but her throat constricted, words caught like needles lodged in her vocal cords. She couldn't bring herself to voice the question that burned within her. It was Sophia who finally broke the tense silence, her voice laced with genuine surprise. "When did you decide this, Ethan? I didn't even know." Hearing Sophia articulate the very question that echoed in her own mind, Lily's senses seemed to sharpen, focusing intently on the unfolding scene. "This morning," Ethan stated, his tone firm, bordering on inflexible. "I just discussed it with your parents. They agree it's best if I accompany you." Sophia's initial enthusiasm seemed to wane, her voice softening, tinged with a hint of uncertainty. "But what about Lily's scholarship?" she stammered, grasping at any reason to object to this sudden, drastic plan. Ethan dismissed her concern with a wave of his hand. "The bank transfers will continue automatically." He brushed aside Lily's future, her very existence, with such ease. He was making life-altering decisions that directly impacted her, yet hadn't offered her so much as a glance, a flicker of acknowledgement. Lily watched Ethan's retreating back, her heart growing numb with a pain that felt both sharp and strangely distant. Sophia, noticing Lily's pallid complexion, gently tugged at her sleeve, her brow furrowed with concern. "Lily, are you all right? You don't look well." Lily slowly dragged her gaze away from the empty doorway, forcing herself to meet Sophia's worried eyes. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was a raspy whisper, barely recognizable as her own. "I'm fine, Sophia. I should go back to my room." Without waiting for a response, she turned and fled, hurrying out of the room, each step a desperate attempt to outrun the tidal wave of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. Safely inside her room, she bolted the door shut, the click of the lock echoing in the sudden silence. Lily leaned against the door, feeling as though all the strength had drained from her limbs. She pressed a hand to her chest, her breath coming in ragged gasps, trying to anchor herself against the swirling vortex of panic and despair. Ethan's dismissive words, his casual abandonment, replayed in her mind. A relentless, tormenting loop. "Now that Sophia's gone, there's no reason for you to stay either." When Ethan had first announced his intention to leave, a desperate plea to stay, to reconsider, had risen to Lily's lips. But the words had died unspoken, swallowed by a wave of self-doubt and a crushing sense of insignificance. Who was she to ask him to stay? She was nothing, nobody. She had no right, no claim on his time, his attention, his life. The bitter truth settled heavily in her stomach, a cold, indigestible lump of despair. Instinctively, she reached for the amulet tucked in her pocket, seeking a sliver of comfort, a tangible reminder of what? Hope? A delusion she had clung to for too long? But her fingers brushed against empty fabric. Her pocket was bare. The amulet, her silent confidant, her hidden treasure, was gone. Panic flared, hot and sharp. Lily's face paled. She frantically searched her pockets, her backpack, rummaging through her belongings with increasing desperation. Her mind raced, retracing her steps, trying to pinpoint the last time she had felt the reassuring weight of the amulet against her skin. Before returning to the Yin villa, she had been clutching it tightly, a silent talisman against the encroaching darkness. The only place she could have possibly lost it, Sophia's room. She sprang to her feet, a fragile tendril of hope flickering within her. Perhaps it was simply a misplaced object, a trivial loss. But the amulet held so much more than material value. It contained her secret, her carefully guarded truth. She rushed to the door, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, desperately trying to reassure herself that it was nothing more than a simple mishap. But as she swung the door open, she found Sophia standing right outside, a small object held out in her palm. "Lily," Sophia said softly, her voice gentle, apologetic, "is this yours? Did you lose your amulet?" In Sophia's outstretched hand lay the amulet, her amulet, the delicate cord tangled around her fingers, the embroidered pouch holding its precious secret. Lily's breath hitched in her throat. She reached out a trembling hand, accepting the amulet as if it were a fragile, priceless treasure. "Yes," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Thank you." She clutched the amulet tightly in her hand, quickly stuffing it back into her pocket, not daring to examine it, not wanting to know if the hidden photograph, her most vulnerable secret, had been discovered, exposed. She turned abruptly, intending to retreat back into the perceived safety of her room, to slam the door shut, to shut out the world and the possibility of further exposure. But Sophia's voice, soft yet insistent, stopped her in her tracks once more. "Lily," Sophia called out again, her tone pleading. Lily froze, her back still to Sophia, desperately fighting to maintain control, to suppress the rising tide of emotions threatening to spill over. Slowly, reluctantly, she turned back, meeting Sophia's gentle, earnest gaze. "Lily," Sophia began, her voice filled with a quiet sincerity, If you ever find someone you love, someone special, please don't give up on them. Don't be afraid to tell them how you feel." Sophia paused, her eyes searching Lily's, conveying a depth of understanding that resonated deep within Lily's soul. "You're my best friend, Lily, and all I want is for you to be happy." Her words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning, with a delicate, heartbreaking empathy. Lily understood, with a clarity that pierced through her emotional fog. Sophia knew. She knew Lily's secret, her hidden affections, her unrequited love for Ethan. Watching Sophia turn and walk away, leaving Lily alone in the hallway, a strange mix of emotions swirled within Lily. Gratitude, embarrassment, a profound sense of sadness, and something akin to liberation. A sleepless night stretched into a gray dawn. Lily arrived at school long before classes began, seeking refuge in the familiar routine of her studies. In class, her gaze drifted repeatedly to the clock on the wall, the slow, relentless march of time marking the passing hours. As the hands crept past 2 p.m., a wave of melancholy washed over her. Sophia and Ethan's flight would be taking off now, soaring through the sky, carrying them further and further away. After today, she didn't know when, or if, she would ever see them again. Would there ever be enough time? Time to heal, to move on, to forget? The thought hung heavy in the air, unanswered, unanswerable. Lily's gaze dimmed, a shadow of sadness falling over her face. She forced herself to push the thoughts away, to focus on the present, on the mundane reality of lectures and textbooks. The bell signaling the end of class finally rang, shattering the oppressive silence. Lily gathered her belongings, preparing to leave, when she realized with a jolt that she had left a crucial textbook at the Yen villa. Reluctantly, Lily made the detour back to the Yen residence. She had expected to find the house empty at this hour, save for the housekeeper and the groundskeeper. But as she stepped into the living room, she froze. Ethan was there, lounging on the sofa, his presence unexpected, unsettling. Lily's breath hitched in her throat. "Ethan," she stammered, her carefully constructed composure faltering. "Shouldn't you be with Sophia? At the airport?" Ethan's gaze lifted, settling on her, his expression unreadable. "Sophia," he said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. Decided she wanted to experience life on her own for a while. A flicker of something akin to relief, tinged with a strange, unfamiliar emotion, stirred within Lily, a faint loosening of the knot in her chest. But before she could fully process this unexpected twist, Ethan continued, his tone hardening, reverting back to the cold indifference of their previous encounter. "Lily," he began, his words sharp, accusatory, "do you remember why I brought you to live with the Yans in the first place?" The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken recriminations. Lily's thoughts recoiled, the warmth of the fleeting relief instantly replaced by a chilling dread. Ethan's words echoed in her mind, a stark reminder of their unequal dynamic, their transactional relationship. "I will sponsor your education until you graduate university. In return, you must take good care of Sophia. She is the most important person in my life." And now, Sophia was gone, her future, her return, uncertain. A chilling realization dawned on Lily. Her breath caught, her chest constricting. And then, Ethan's voice, cold and devoid of warmth, confirmed her deepest fears. "Now that Sophia is gone, there's no need for you to stay either, Lily." The afternoon sun, low in the sky, cast long shadows across the living room, painting the space in hues of amber and gold. A line of light, sharp and unforgiving, seemed to cleave the room in two, dividing them, separating them into two distinct, irreconcilable worlds. Lily stared at Ethan, the unspoken rejection settling upon her like a shroud, a chilling numbness spreading through her limbs, stealing her breath. Because Sophia had left, she, Lily, was no longer needed. Her purpose, her value, had been entirely contingent on Sophia's presence in Ethan's life. A wave of raw emotion, a volatile cocktail of hurt and anger and despair, surged within her, threatening to shatter her fragile composure. Her voice, when she finally managed to speak, was a hoarse whisper, barely audible above the pounding of her heart. Are you asking me to leave?" Ethan's gaze flickered to her face, catching the faint shimmer of unshed tears in her eyes. A flicker of something unreadable, something akin to unease, crossed his features, quickly masked by a carefully constructed indifference. After a moment, he spoke, his voice measured, devoid of empathy. "Don't worry, Lily. The scholarship will continue, of course. But, yes, I think it's best if you move out of the Yen residence. I've already arranged an apartment for you. It's ready whenever you are." Lily's hands clenched into fists, her nails digging into her palms. Words failed her. She couldn't speak, couldn't protest, couldn't even begin to articulate the crushing weight of his rejection. Had this been his plan all along? To wait for Sophia's departure before finally casting her aside? Or had the decision been more recent, a spontaneous reaction to Sophia's unexpected departure? Ethan's eyes were cold, distant, utterly devoid of warmth. Lily saw, with a painful clarity, how utterly unwanted she was, how desperate he was to be rid of her presence. She couldn't bear to meet his gaze any longer. Lowering her eyes, she forced herself to speak, her voice trembling slightly, but maintaining a veneer of composure. "I understand. I will move out. But the apartment won't be necessary. I'll move back into the dorms. Ethan's brow furrowed, a hint of annoyance flickering in his eyes. Lily, you. But Lily cut him off, raising her head, her chin lifting in a gesture of defiance, masking the raw pain that threatened to overwhelm her. And the scholarship, she declared, her voice gaining strength, a newfound resolve hardening her tone. I won't need that either. I can manage on my own. Thank you for everything you've done for me these past years. Without another word, she turned and walked towards the stairs, her back rigid, her steps measured, betraying none of the turmoil raging within. But the moment she turned away, the carefully constructed smile on her face crumbled, dissolving into a torrent of hot, silent tears that streamed down her cheeks, unchecked, unbidden. Back in her room, she stood for a moment, gazing around at the familiar space that had been her sanctuary for the past 4 years. It was hard to believe that her time here was coming to such an abrupt, unceremonious end. From the day she had moved in to the day she was being asked to leave, it felt like no more than a blink of an eye, a fleeting, ephemeral moment in time. Lily's breath hitched in her throat. She reached for her suitcase, pulling it from the closet, and began to pack her clothes, her movements swift, efficient, betraying none of the emotional wreckage within. She moved to her desk, intending to close her laptop, when a notification chime sounded, breaking the silence. She clicked on the notification, revealing a new email from Sophia. The subject line was simple, "For you, Lily." The email itself was brief, heartfelt, and utterly unexpected. "Lily," it read, "I'm so sorry. I accidentally stumbled upon your amulet, and I saw the photograph inside. I know your secret now, Lily. I know you love Ethan. You know I don't love Ethan in that way. I would never want my presence to hold you back from telling him how you feel. You're my dearest friend, Lily, and I want you to be happy. I hope that when you reply to this, you'll have good news to share." Reading Sophia's words, a lump formed in Lily's throat, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. A wave of gratitude and a profound sense of bittersweet understanding washed over her. But before she could formulate a reply, a sound from downstairs broke through her reverie. Mrs. Yan's voice, calling out her name. "Lily, dinner's ready." Lily took a deep breath, steeling herself, and quickly wiped away the tears. She had to face them, had to maintain her composure, at least for a little while longer. She forced a semblance of calm and descended the stairs. At the dinner table, Mrs. Yan, seemingly oblivious to the emotional storm brewing beneath the surface, launched into a cheerful monologue about Sophia's new relationship abroad. Then, she turned her attention to a silent, withdrawn Ethan, her tone shifting to one of mild exasperation. "Ethan, honestly, do you even like Sophia? You had so many chances when she was here. We even suggested you go with her overseas, but you refused. And now, just like that, she has a boyfriend. What are you going to do now?" Ethan shrugged, his expression impassive. "I did say I'd go with her, Mom, if you recall, but she insisted on going alone. There wasn't much I could do." Mrs. Yin huffed, clearly dissatisfied with his nonchalant response, and was about to press further when Mr. Yin intervened, his voice calm and authoritative. "If it's not meant to be, don't force it, Martha. I think Ethan always saw Sophia as more of a little sister anyway." To Lily's surprise, Ethan didn't refute his father's assessment. He simply put down his chopsticks, his movements deliberate, detached. "I'm finished eating," he announced, rising from the table. Lily watched him walk away, his retreating figure disappearing up the stairs. A question formed unbidden in her mind. Was it possible? Had Ethan's affection for Sophia been nothing more than a brotherly protectiveness, a deep-seated sense of responsibility, rather than romantic love? Why else would he remain so unmoved, so detached, upon hearing that Sophia had found love elsewhere? Snapping out of her reverie, Lily heard Mrs. Yan's voice, addressing her directly. "Lily, dear, if you ever fall for someone, please don't be like Ethan. Don't miss your chance. You have to seize the opportunity when it presents itself." Lily's eyelashes fluttered, a faint blush rising to her cheeks. She offered a quiet, non-committal reply, her mind still wrestling with the unexpected shift in her understanding of Ethan's feelings. After dinner, Lily returned to her room, intending to resume packing. But as she pushed open the half-closed door, she froze. Ethan was there, seated at her desk, his silhouette framed against the soft glow of the computer screen. And on the screen, illuminated in the dim light, was Sophia's email. The email that revealed Lily's most carefully guarded secret. The air in the room crackled with unspoken tension. Ethan turned, his gaze settling on Lily's stunned face, his expression unreadable. He spoke, his voice low, deliberate, each word hanging heavy in the air. You love me? His question was blunt, direct, leaving no room for evasion. Lily felt as though all the carefully constructed walls around her heart were crumbling, collapsing inwards. Her secret, the carefully guarded truth she had nurtured for 4 long years, was out in the open, exposed, vulnerable, and so cruelly, so abruptly. Lily drew a deep, shuddering breath, meeting Ethan's probing gaze, his eyes searching, questioning, demanding answers. The word, heavy with unspoken emotion, forced its way past the lump in her throat, a whispered confession, a fragile offering. Yes. The temperature in the room seemed to plummet, the air growing thick, suffocating. Ethan's brow furrowed, his expression hardening. Lily, he said, his voice sharp, laced with disbelief, bordering on anger. Have you ever considered that what you feel for me isn't love at all? That it's just gratitude? Lily's mind reeled, the words hitting her with the force of a physical blow. Just gratitude. The phrase echoed in her mind, each syllable a sharp, agonizing jab, a cruel dismissal of the deepest, most vulnerable part of her heart. Her nails dug crescents into her palms, the pain a small, grounding distraction from the emotional devastation threatening to engulf her. She forced herself to speak, her voice strained, but firm. I know perfectly well what love is, Ethan. I don't think you do. Ethan's voice rose, cutting her off, sharp and dismissive, his eyes filled with disappointment, almost disgust. I always thought you were sensible, mature, but you're still acting like a child, Lily. So naive. It's because of this childish infatuation, that Sophia felt she had to leave the country. Lily's face paled, the accusation hitting her like a slap. She couldn't believe that Ethan would twist the narrative so completely that he would blame her for Sophia's departure, for a situation she had no control over. Her heart twisted, a sharp, agonizing pain piercing through her chest. Sophia left because she's in love with someone else, Ethan. Someone who lives overseas. Ethan scoffed, dismissing her words with a wave of his hand. But if it wasn't for you, Lily, she wouldn't have felt the need to leave so abruptly. She wouldn't have felt pressured to run away. Lily fell silent, utterly defeated. She had no words left, no arguments to offer. He had seen Sophia's email, he knew the real reason for her departure, yet he still chose to twist the truth, to lay the blame squarely at her feet. Simply because she was not the woman he desired. Because her love for him was inconvenient, unwelcome. The gaping wound in her heart widened, the pain intensifying, a searing, corrosive ache that threatened to consume her whole being. Lily reached for her suitcase, hefting it from the floor. I understand, she said, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. I'll repay you everything I owe you. And I won't trouble you with my feelings anymore. With those final, carefully measured words, she turned and walked swiftly out of the room, leaving Ethan standing alone in the dimly lit space. In the living room downstairs, Mr. and Mrs. Yin were still engaged in quiet conversation. Hearing footsteps on the stairs, they looked up, their faces registering surprise as Lily appeared, dragging her suitcase behind her. Mrs. Yan's brow furrowed with confusion. Lily, dear, what's going on? What is all this? Lily lowered her gaze, her eyelashes veiling the telltale redness that betrayed her tears. I'm sorry, Aunt Martha, Uncle Yin, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I should have told you sooner. I've decided to move back into the dorms. I won't be staying here anymore. Even as she spoke, She could feel Ethan's presence behind her, his shadow falling across the doorway at the top of the stairs. Mrs. Yan's gaze shifted from Lily to the figure standing silently on the landing above. "Ethan, what is the meaning of this?" she demanded, her voice sharp with concern. But Lily didn't wait for his response. Suppressing the rising tide of emotion, she spoke again, her voice gaining strength, a quiet resolve hardening her tone. "Thank you both," she said, her gaze sweeping briefly over their concerned faces. "Thank you for everything you've done for me these past years. I should go now." And with that, she turned and walked swiftly towards the front door, leaving behind the only home she had known for the past 4 years. Ethan watched Lily's retreating figure disappear through the doorway, her silhouette fading into the twilight. The sound of the front door closing echoed through the silent house, a final, definitive punctuation mark on their fractured relationship. In the sudden quiet, Mrs. Yin and Mr. Yin exchanged a worried glance. Mr. Yin turned to Ethan, his voice laced with concern. "Ethan, did you and Lily have a fight?" Ethan remained silent, his expression unreadable, his dark eyes reflecting a storm of emotions he kept carefully hidden from view. 11 p.m. The streets of Lee City still pulsed with life, a vibrant current of humanity flowing through the brightly lit avenues. But for Lily, standing alone on the sidewalk, the city felt cold, indifferent, utterly unwelcoming. The university dormitories were long past curfew. With nowhere else to go, she checked into a small, impersonal hotel room nearby. The room was sparsely furnished, sterile, echoing with a profound, unsettling silence. As she closed the door behind her, the dam finally broke. The pent-up emotions, the raw grief and heartbreak, surged to the surface, overwhelming her carefully constructed defenses. Lily sank onto the edge of the bed, her body collapsing under the weight of her despair. She pressed her hands to her face, her breath coming in ragged sobs, unable to comprehend how everything had unraveled so completely, so catastrophically. How had her life taken such a devastating, irreversible turn? Suddenly, her phone buzzed in her pocket, breaking the oppressive silence. Lily fumbled for the device, her fingers trembling as she unlocked the screen. A new message from Sophia. "Lily, are you asleep? Did you see my email? Are you all right?" Reading Sophia's message, the memory of her final, devastating conversation with Ethan, triggered by that very email, resurfaced, sharp and painful. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the faint hum of the city outside. Then, slowly, hesitantly, Lily began to type, her fingers moving across the screen, each word a painful admission of defeat. "Sophia," she wrote, her voice breaking in her mind, I don't think Ethan and it's never going to happen." Her fingers froze above the keyboard, unable to continue. Just then, the screen flashed, a call incoming. The caller ID displayed a single, stark name, Ethan Yin. Lily's breath caught in her throat. Her heart lurched, a chaotic mix of hope and trepidation flooding her senses. Ethan was calling. Why? Was he calling to apologize? To ask her to come back? Would he retract his harsh words, offer a glimmer of hope? In the suffocating silence of the hotel room, she could hear the frantic pounding of her own heart, a wild, desperate rhythm against her ribs. Her gaze fixed on the screen, watching the seconds tick by, the call about to end unanswered. With a trembling hand, Lily reached out and swiped the green icon, answering the call. Ethan's familiar, deep voice filled the silence, his tone clipped, devoid of warmth. "Where are you?" Lily's stomach clenched, a knot of anxiety tightening within her. Her voice was barely a whisper, her lips trembling. "Back at school," she managed, her voice choked with emotion. Ethan's voice hardened, betraying a hint of impatience. "The dorms are locked up for the night, Lily. Don't lie to me." Lily's throat constricted, words failing her. He knew. Of course he knew. Then, Ethan continued, his voice losing its sharp edge, softening slightly, though remaining distant, impersonal. "Look, Lily, I don't care if you stay in a hotel, but tomorrow, find some time to come back to the villa. Collect your things. Explain everything to my parents properly. Don't expect me to do it for you." The cold, clinical detachment in his voice was like a physical blow. The realization crashed over her, crushing, undeniable. The person who cared about her, who worried about her well-being, was not Ethan. It was his parents. Ethan, the man she loved, was still angry, still resentful of her feelings, still unwilling to offer even a shred of empathy. Flicker of understanding. What had she done wrong? What crime had she committed, other than loving him too deeply, too desperately? Tears welled in her eyes, hot and stinging, blurring her vision. She opened her mouth to speak, to plead, to beg for understanding, but her voice caught in her throat, choked by a sob that escaped before she could suppress it. Silence descended on the line, a heavy, pregnant pause that stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then, a faint sound, barely audible through the static of the phone line, reached Ethan's ears, a soft, muffled sob. His anger seemed to dissipate, the sharp edges of his voice softening, his tone shifting to one of weary resignation. He sighed, the sound heavy with unspoken emotions. "Just calm down, Lily," he said, his voice lower, more subdued. "Get some rest, and don't do anything childish." Without waiting for a response, he hung up, the line going dead, leaving Lily alone in the echoing silence of the hotel room. The cold, sterile silence of the disconnected line pressed against her ears, amplified by the crushing weight of her despair. The phone slipped from her numb fingers, falling onto the bed beside her. Lily buried her face in the pillows, her body racked with silent sobs, each tear a testament to her broken heart, her shattered dreams. Her quiet weeping was barely a whisper, lost in the vast emptiness of the night. As deep autumn descended, the ginkgo trees on campus began their slow transformation, their leaves gradually turning to a vibrant, golden yellow. The next day, in a South Central University classroom, Lily sat hunched over her desk, her chin resting on her hand, her gaze unfocused, lost in a world of her own making. A gentle breeze drifted through the open window, rustling the pages of the textbook lying open before her, the words blurring into meaningless shapes. Ever since confessing her feelings to Sophia and enduring the devastating fallout with Ethan, a profound sense of aimlessness had settled over her. She felt adrift, untethered, as if the very ground beneath her feet had shifted. The world felt vast, indifferent, and utterly devoid of solace. Lost in her thoughts, she barely registered the sound of her name being called from the doorway. "Xiaqingning? Lily? Could you come out here for a moment?" Lily blinked, her thoughts snapping back to the present, the mundane reality of the classroom. She straightened up, pushing back her chair, and walked towards the door, her movements slow, almost hesitant. Outside the classroom, in the hushed hallway, her faculty advisor stood waiting, a serious expression on her face. "Lily," she began, her tone direct, businesslike, "the university has an exchange program opportunity with a business school in the UK. Are you interested in applying?" Lily stared at her, momentarily stunned, her mind blank. She had never considered studying abroad, never even entertained the possibility. It seemed like a world away, a distant, unattainable dream. Her first instinct was to decline, to politely refuse. But then, the memory of her bitter argument with Ethan, his cold dismissal, his desire to be rid of her, flashed through her mind. Silence stretched between them, her initial impulse warring with a sudden, unexpected flicker of possibility. Sensing her hesitation, her advisor pressed gently, her voice softening slightly. "I understand it's a big decision, Lily. Are you worried about leaving your family? If you're not sure, you can take a few days to think it over. Let me know your answer later." Family. The word hung in the air, heavy with irony, with a painful sense of loss. Lily lowered her gaze, her thoughts turning, unbidden, to Ethan. His face, cold, indifferent, filled her mind. Just last night, she had burned all bridges with the only family that truly mattered to her, the man she loved, the man who had so decisively rejected her. There was nothing left for her here. No reason to stay. This exchange program, perhaps it was a sign, an unexpected opportunity, a chance to escape, to heal, to start anew, far away from the painful reminders of her shattered dreams. A flicker of resolve ignited within her, a spark of determination cutting through the fog of her despair. She raised her head, meeting her advisor's expectant gaze, her voice gaining strength, a newfound certainty hardening her tone. "No," she said, her voice clear, unwavering. "There's no need to think about it, Professor. Yes, I'll go. I want to go." "Excellent," her advisor replied, a smile gracing her lips. "In that case, please sign the exchange program application form. Fill it out now, and then you can go home and wait for further instructions. We'll be in touch with the details in the next few days." She gestured towards her office, leading Lily inside. From a filing cabinet, she retrieved a crisp, official-looking form and a pen, handing them to Lily. Lily stared at the application form for a long moment, her heart heavy with a sense of finality. Then, with a deep breath, she picked up the pen, her hand trembling slightly, and began to write, each stroke of the pen a deliberate act of severance, a quiet farewell to a life she was leaving behind. Line by line, she filled in the form, her name, her student ID, her signature, each word a step further away from her past towards an uncertain future. It felt like she was writing her own farewell letter, signing her own decree of separation, completing the application, handing it back to her advisor. Walking out of the office and into the bustling hallway, Lily felt strangely detached, hollowed out, as if a vital part of herself had been excised, leaving behind a gaping emptiness. A profound sense of loss settled over her, a quiet ache that resonated deep within her soul. Just then, her phone vibrated in her pocket, breaking the heavy silence of her thoughts. She pulled it out, her fingers numb, her gaze falling upon a new message from Ethan. The message was stark, minimalist, utterly devoid of warmth or emotion. 2 words, cold and impersonal, filled the screen. "Come over." Lily stared at the message, her mind blank, her thoughts momentarily suspended. Then, with a jolt, she remembered. She had to go back to the villa, to collect her belongings, to face Ethan one last time. This final meeting, she realized with a heavy heart, would be her farewell, her final, heartbreaking goodbye.